Center since 2000. The first time I heard about the New Life Center, I had just moved to Toronto and I was working as an actor, actually, but I had an education background. And I was looking for work. I was tired of doing temporary office jobs while I was looking for theater work. And I met a teacher named Tim Schmucker, and he was working at the New Life Center at that time. And he said, well, I can't give you a job, but he said, if you want to volunteer, you can volunteer at the Mennonite New Life Center. And it'll just sort of give you something to do while you're looking for work. So that was my in to the Mennonite New Life Center. And then, of course, I met Betty and Adolfo, and I fell in love with the work. I volunteered whenever I could. Sometimes it was 5 days a week, sometimes it was 3 days a week, and for about a year. And then after 1 year, a job opened up at the Mennonite New Life Center. I assisted in the classroom, yeah. So I was like a teacher's assistant with Tim and some of the other teachers at that time. Yeah, it just slowly turned into full-time work. It didn't start that way, and it wasn't my original intention. You know, I just thought that I wanted to build my resume and build my experience, and I wanted to use that education as well. And I thought teaching will be fulfilling. So even to volunteer at some of these schools, you needed 2 years experience, which I didn't have. So the New Life Center was the first school, the first organization that basically said, come, you can get experience with us. At that time, we were one location. We didn't have so many locations, and we were down at Queen Street location, and we were in the church there, and the classrooms were, some were in the basement and some were on the second floor of the building. I don't remember the exact number, but I know that we were all in one location. It was like a small family. The numbers we wanted in the classroom was anywhere between like 18 to 25. We were always looking for those kind of numbers. The reality was that it could be anywhere from, in the summer months, sometimes it was quite full, like 25, but then at certain points of the year, the classroom would maybe have 10 students, 8 students. And I do remember there were some days teaching where no students showed up. 0 students showed up. And that was just because at that point, the organization needed to move locations. It was no longer, that community, that neighborhood was no longer a neighborhood where newcomers were moving. And so we were always like, bare minimum, we need to have 18 in our classroom or 15 in our classroom. And that was really tough, but that didn't mean that we weren't making impact in those lives. You know, maybe we had only 12, but so there was, for LINC teachers particularly, there was always stress on how many students have shown up in class today. And will we get funded? And there was always the threat of losing our funding if we didn't have the exact number of students in the classroom. And that was sometimes really upsetting because you knew you were making impact, but okay, you didn't have the right number and we would lose classes. In the early years, what I found most difficult was sometimes figuring out how to make sure that everybody felt comfortable in the class, given the different reasons why they were there. So of course, if they were coming from a trauma point of view, and that's the reason they were in Canada, there was a very specific set of needs that needed to be met. If they were independent immigrants and they were here because they had chosen to come to Canada, that was a different feeling from that student. And sometimes, because I was still a young teacher, It was trying to find a way to make sure everybody was comfortable in the classroom, because things would always come up. For example, I had one student, and I didn't know this, but he had experienced bombs going off in a basement. He was from former Yugoslavia. And so for him, one day, all of a sudden in class, he just couldn't manage the moment because our class was in the basement. And so you just knowing how to respond to those emotional moments. I had another student who didn't know whether her husband was alive or dead. She was from Colombia and she had escaped to Canada. So those were really tough moments in those early years. And so in those early years, what I remember feeling was, okay, this is really hard. Learning a second language as an adult, you have to make yourself so vulnerable and you have to be willing to be like the child again. And these are adults with professional backgrounds, complicated life stories, a whole history. My solution back then, and it's still one that I return to, it's make them laugh. I would be the clown. I would try to make them laugh. And it's not that we didn't allow for the sorrow or the difficult moments. If they happened, we would sit with them for a moment, but then let's transition. And so that was often my motto, those early years. Keep them laughing so that they can get through this. A big challenge for a lot of LINC teachers is that mental health component, right? Being able to be okay with the tough stuff that comes up in the classroom. And it comes up a lot because the students feel connected to you and they trust you. They see you every day. And so things are bound to come up, and they do, and they surface. And when you're an inexperienced teacher, you feel a bit nervous. You feel like, what's the right thing to do? But now when those moments happen, I don't feel nervous anymore. They just are part of what the classroom is about, and they come and go like everything else. Every day, and that's part of making them laugh. I pursued acting because I was in love with theater. And what I didn't realize was that life was preparing me for the ESL classroom. Because I think you have to bring the language alive for the students. So you want to be playful. As the teacher, you want to be playful, you want to be dynamic, you want to engage them, because let's face it, it's really hard to listen to a second language and try to survive in a new country. And so any little moment where I can be the actor and get their attention back and get them to enjoy the language, that's a good day. I don't know how many. I sometimes think about that a lot, and I feel as though I remember each face, but I know that I don't, and that always makes me a little bit sad when a student remembers me and I don't remember them. But I used to actually save all my class lists. I don't have them anymore, not all of them because we've moved too many times, but I used to have a box where I kept all of my class lists. And the reason I did that was I just wanted to remember the names. And sometimes just looking at the name, I would be like, oh yes, I remember that student. I don't know what the number is, but it's hundreds and hundreds of students. It may sound like a cliche, but I really do feel privileged and honored to spend time with newcomers, because their experience, their stories are a joy to learn about and know about. And I always feel like I learn more from them than they learn from me. in order to be successful in a new country, you need to feel confident using the language. So I would definitely say find a classroom, and if you don't have time to find a class to practice your English, then listen to the music, listen to pop music or whatever kind of music you love. Try to even, if you're working, if you come to Canada and you're working and you're too busy to join an English class, I would say go online. CBC News website is a great one to start, because you can go to the local news and you can start, even if your reading ability isn't very strong, start with the headlines and just find out what's happening in this city that you've just moved to. Like, what's this city about? What are the stories being talked about? But then if you have the time, your best bet is to find an English class and start practicing the English, because with your confidence, you don't need perfect English to succeed. In those early years with Betty and Adolfo Perticelli, and I think they fostered this incredible caring spirit, the caring spirit that they fostered in the New Life Center also included this deep respect for each newcomer as a unique individual person with their own story and their own path that they needed to take. And it was because of Betty and Adolfo, watching them at work and watching how they would react to really tough, difficult situations for different newcomers that passed through our doors. It would be long at the end of a workday and they would still be problem solving how to help someone. And that has always stayed with me. And that was something they also instilled in me. And so for me to go above and beyond for this work, I'll do it any day. One of the main challenges that are always there is funding, and will we keep the organization alive and afloat? That's always a challenge, and that's always a constant challenge. And you sort of get used to that pressure on your shoulders. But also there's a challenge when you expand in terms of the cohesiveness between the different locations and the staff and what all the aims and goals are of the New Life Center. And of course, then there's COVID that changed everything. And that was a huge challenge for all of the staff to move online so quickly, but also for the clients to move online. It was just such a struggle for that first couple of years, and particularly the first 6 months were incredibly intense. And but now the students have adapted, the clients have also adapted, and I feel that I can honestly say, and I would not have said this at the beginning of COVID, but I can honestly say that I like teaching online as much as I like teaching in person. Like, I like them both equally, which I really didn't think I was ever going to say. And that's because I loved teaching in person. We did all sorts of parties, we did gatherings, we did art days, we did role-playing, theater, singing. We did a lot of activities which don't really translate online, but there's other beautiful activities that have come out of online, particularly even in the field of writing. Like students writing their stories and writing poetry and other sort of creative activities like that, that now I can honestly say I like them both. They're both rich areas to teach. My husband would often say, "Why don't you work for TDSB? You could make more money." And I said, yeah, I could make more money at TDSB, you're right. But would I get the same ability to thrive as the New Life Center? And I will say that Betty and Adolfo Perticelli were the ones who gave me that confidence to thrive, but Jorge Silvestri has also given me that ability to be creative and really thrive at the New Life Center too. So if I can credit three incredible individuals, I think I would really say it's just been such a great place to work. So money's not everything. Know the stories, be curious about those stories, be open to those stories, because they're so rich and interesting, and they also will help you build a connection to the newcomer. So I do think that particularly where you are, I mean, when you step on the subway, everyone is on the subway in Toronto. And I think that's one way to start. Obviously, then there's so many other ways like volunteering and mentoring and trying to connect with newcomers. I want to wish all MNLCT clients health, happiness, and success in their new journey in Canada.